Today, I'm going to show you how to set up your green screen, how to properly light for it, and what are the ideal camera settings to get the best results. So first, let's talk camera settings. I'm using a Sony A7C Mark II, and I'm shooting an S-Log3. I would recommend shooting as uncompressed as possible. The highest color reproduction and getting the cleanest noise ratio out of your sensor is going to help you a ton here. I recommend keeping your ISO somewhere close to your native just to get the cleanest noise ratio. So mine's 800, so we're going to stick around there. I also like shooting at 30 frames per second for social media. So my shutter speed is going to be double my frames per second here, which is standard across video. Now, if you have a lot of actor movement in your shot, if whatever is in front of your green screen is going to be moving around very quickly, that's going to cause motion blur. No matter what frame rate you're shooting at, crank your shutter speed just a little bit higher than you would to kind of eliminate some of that motion blur. And then for aperture, I'm set at about an f4 right now, just to keep all the foreground elements mostly in focus. That'll give us the cleanest result. Now we're gonna talk about lighting. And for lighting, you wanna start at 0. So now all of my lights are off. When all of your lights are off, the frame should basically be black. You may be seeing a little bit of light leakage because my area is not perfectly sealed off, but this is where you're going to want to start. And then you're going to turn on your key light. When lighting your green screen, you want to do the best you can to separate the lighting from the green screen and your foreground element. So my softbox has a grid on it, and that's to help not light the green screen as much as I can. I'm not in the biggest space, so it is going to leak a little bit on my green screen, but if you have the space, try to keep your green screen away from you as much as possible. So mine is about 6 to 7 feet behind me. You can get yours even further. It's going to require a bigger green screen, but that'll give you an even better result. Next thing you're going to want to do is a hair light. The hair light is directly above me, aimed downwards to the top of my head. So I'm using a small panel for this at a very low intensity just to get a nice little rim lighting around the hair. This helps separate your hair from the background, which will give you a cleaner key. Next thing we need to do is light our green screen. I have one light on a lighting stand very low to the ground aimed upwards at my green screen. This can probably cause a bit of light leakage and cause some green spilling. But again, if you don't have the space for it, then this is the best you can do. If I had more, I'd probably put that light off to the side and another one off to the other side, aiming them towards the center and then balancing it out that way. If you have a false color reading, definitely use false color to make sure your green screen is as balanced as possible. If not, maybe you have zebra markings, whatever exposure readings you have, use that to make sure it's even across the green screen. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, mine's not being lit perfectly, but I want to do that just because I know everyone's not going to have an ideal setup. So I'm trying to go with the least amount of gear as possible, but this is about as baseline as you're going to want to get. So if you don't have studio lighting for your green screen, I highly recommend you get studio lights. Do not rely off of natural light. That'll be inconsistent. So now that we have this set up, let's go into DaVinci Resolve and I'm going to show you the tools I use to get the cleanest key. Now that we're in DaVinci Resolve and we have our clip in the timeline, the first thing we're going to want to switch to is the Fusion tab. The first thing we're going to do is shift spacebar. That's going to open up this little tool window, and we are going to do a color space transform to get Fusion in the right color space. So we're going to switch the input color space to S-Gamut 3 Cine. Now, if you didn't shoot on a Sony camera, then you need to pick whichever input color space you use. Just look it up. And then for input gamma, I'm going to do S-Log3 because that is what I shot in. So now I'm going to click on the first node. I'm going to do Control C, Control V. That's just a copy and paste the node. So now we have 2 of them. Click on the second node and you're going to click Swap. Now it's going to look like nothing happened, but this is to make sure that everything we're working in is in the proper color space for Fusion to work best. So now color space transform, we're going to shift spacebar again, and we're going to click on the Delta keyer. The Delta keyer is going to be the main keyer we use to get this background out. One thing I like to also add is a matte control, and this will help with some of that green spill suppression. If you're getting a lot of green spill on you from your backdrop, we're going to tweak those settings later. Now let's open up that Delta keyer. You're going to want to click and hold on the background color here and move it in. And to get a better look at this, switch to the alpha control. Pure black is ideal and pure white up here is ideal. So when you hold this down and you move it around, what I'm typically looking for when I do this is how sharp can I keep the hair? So see how if I go a little bit out here, I start to lose some of those edges there. But then if I move it closer, it kind of comes in. You're going to want to find a good middle ground because we're going to tweak this a little bit, but try to get a good starting point. So I'm going to leave mine there. What I like to do is add my clean plate before I do any corrections here. That's just personally how I like to do it. The clean plate is going to be what you recorded at the beginning of your shot, and that's where you're not in the frame. I'm going to click off of my node tree and I'm going to search for time stretcher. And then I'm going to add a clean plate to the time stretcher tool. And then I'm going to connect the time stretcher tool to the color space transform, and you're going to connect it where this box is. So now we're feeding into both of these areas here. For the time stretcher and the clean plate, open up the clean plate on the left side. You're going to do that by clicking this little dot here on the left viewer. And then we're going to open up our time stretcher settings. And we're going to uncheck this keyframe and we're going to hit our interpolation mode to nearest. And then what you're going to want to do is roll your clip all the way back until you get to the shot where you're not in it. So I'm not in the shot here. Make sure you don't roll it back too far where it's beyond the actual frame limits of your video, because then it's gonna, sometimes it'll show this frame here, but it's not actually realizing what you're looking at. Just make sure you are actually in a frame that exists in your video. So go to the very first frame where you're not in it and it should work out just fine. We're gonna click clean plate, is select our background color here. And you see how it's starting to select all of our foreground elements. Some of the side here is getting selected, the table, the chair, and then I have a light behind me. And then we're gonna click erode until we're covering up everything that we want out of the frame. And then click this fill checkbox here on the right side. And then boom, we've now created a clean plate. Now, depending on what you have in your foreground and background that you need to pull out, you're just gonna keep moving this erode tool or grow edges to get it exactly where you need to get it. So once you have this done, you're going to take your clean plate here and you're going to right click it. You're going to right click it and drag to the delta key. Now remember, that's a right click, not a left click. If you right click, this comes up and we're going to select clean plate. When I click on clean plate, take a look at our alpha side on the right here. Now look how much that cleaned up the hair area and selected a good portion of the background. Now it's not perfectly as keyed out as we wanted to, but if I remove it, that's significantly better than where we started. And if you look at the hair, you can even see some of the hair detail comes back in there. So now we're gonna go to our delta keyer, go to my clean foreground and clean background first. Anything you do in any green screen keying, you want to be as delicate as possible. These effects can be very intense. Like if you just, and don't be scared to mess around with it, but just make sure when you're doing it, don't be so intense with it. So I'm going to look at my background. I'm going to go clean background, and that's going to darken it up a little bit. But look at how even just a little bit too far, this area right here is already starting to kind of clip. So you're going to want to tweak these accordingly. A lot of times it's like just a little bit. Like I usually just go a few decimals in. And then what we can do is increase that threshold area. And if you're having trouble seeing, control scroll wheel is how you zoom in on PC. And you're going to want to get it as clean as you can possibly get it without losing too much. You may lose a little bit, but as long as we have those finer details on the outside, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. So I'm going to put mine somewhere about there. Now that's better. So now the next thing we need to do is create our garbage and solid mats. So I'm going to click off of the delta keyer again, shift spacebar. I personally like using the polygon tool. The first thing I'm going to do is create a general outline around your character. And we're doing this because the only thing that matters is me and the table here. So if I don't have the best key out here, I'm going to mask it out, because if you get a bunch of chattering in your image, that can still show up in your final render. So you want to make this area as tight as possible and be aware that your hands may move in and out of frame. So give yourself a little bit of leeway here for your arms to come out. Now I'm going to right click this and go into the delta keyer and put it as a garbage mat. And then you can see everything outside of this immediately just got keyed out. So now we have pure black on all sides. I'm going to do another polygon, and I'm going to create a mask around the table, because the table does not need to be manually keyed. I know I want the table in at all times. There's no green there. And And if I'm taking my time with this, I would zoom in very closely, but just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just going to show you a rough little edge here. But you want to go in close, make sure you're getting a perfect line across that table because the table doesn't move. So you're good to go. Right click this, and we're going to put this as our solid matte. So now that turns pure white, which means it is in, it is not being keyed. That's just a guaranteed it's in there. Let's go back to the color view here. And if I zoom in, you can see we're still getting some good fine lines here. It's looking pretty good. Now, just as a tester, I'll go back to the edit page here, take a look at this, and I'll throw in my background. The key's looking pretty good. To get a clearer look, let's hop over to the color page, and I'm going to do a S-Log3 to Rec 709 conversion. And I'm just going to do a slight little color correction here. Get in some saturation. So now when we look at this, you can see we're getting really good detailing in the hair. And yeah, so this is kind of generally where I'm working. And one thing that we need to do is go to your spill method. I set mine usually to medium. This shot that I have, surprisingly, doesn't actually have green spill. I typically am dealing with green spill, but I was far enough from my background where I didn't get too much of it. But if you're getting a lot of green spill on the edges, click the spill method here for medium. And then you're going to adjust your spill suppression intensity here. And you can play with the fringe settings to fine tune what type of colors that you're trying to push it to key it out. Now, if I switch back to the alpha here, one thing I can do to increase the intensity of some of this area here is push up on the gain a little bit. Just a touch of gain, and look at that. It's already disappeared. Now, to make sure that this isn't doing too much, I'm going to come up here a little bit, take a look at it. So if I push it about right there on that gain, we're still getting a little bit in this area. And take a look at that 1.071. It's doing a lot. So I'm going to reset it. And see, it is taking a little bit of that hair out. So maybe not even that much. A little bit of chatter there. I can spend some time, clean this up, and go back and forth to make sure that the hair is coming in clean. But for the most part, if I'm taking a look at this, I would say this is a pretty clean key. And then the matte control, if you're still getting a lot of spill, click on your matte control and then click the spill tab. Make sure it's set to green. You will have even more suppression settings here for your green spill. So if you find that you're still getting some green on the edges from the green screen, play with these settings to dial it in. But this is how I do my green screening, and I think this will give you the best results. So now if you've gone through this whole tutorial and you're still finding that you're struggling with some of these concepts and you need one-on-one, you can book me one-on-one through my Calendly link on my landing page, which will be linked in my bio. I hope you got everything you needed from this tutorial. Let me know any thoughts you have in the comment section. Like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you guys in the next one.